Hi everybody, welcome to 小马娃。今天我有很多事情要跟你们讲啊，我要继续跟你们讲那个马克思的理论啊，马克思的列宁啊，马克思的关系，我要跟你们讲啊。Okay, so today everybody, welcome to Little Mao, 欢迎光临。The core principle of Little Mao is no speech, no life. I remind all of you that this is a satire. 就是一个讽刺，这个 podcast 就是一个讽刺。So 我跟你们讲很多事情很好笑啊。So on a serious point here to start the podcast, I wanted to mention something that I read recently. Kierkegaard, the famous philosopher, once stated, "Crowds are untruthful. Crowds are untruthful." And the core principle of Little Mao is no speech, no life. Without speech, life would have no meaning. As Nietzsche once said, without music, life would have no meaning. And 没有言论，没有自由啊，就是那个核心的原则，我要跟你们讲啊。So I'm going to be talking in Chinese and in English, and I'm going to be doing what I did on previous podcasts. I'm going to be talking about the Little Red Book from 1967 to 76. This was a very pivotal book in promoting death and destruction in China. It was carried around. It was actually required. This is actually a copy of the original, and if you look at it, it has the highest command written here in Chinese. 最高指示. 最高指示. So, we'll continue to talk about Little Mao. I'll translate a couple quotations for you. That's number one. Number two is I'm going to continue to talk to you about crushing facts that are very amusing and true. But I also want to mention that I encourage you all to look at the links that I provide below. Make up your own mind. Don't be an ideologue. Don't be a jackass. Think for yourself. Don't be an empty vessel promoting and propagating bullshit ideas that have no backing and have no empirical evidence or have no fact behind them. Think for yourselves. That's the core principle. Think for yourselves. That's the core principle. So, why is this important? As Nietzsche once said, everyone is the unconscious exponent of a dead philosopher. And we are going to be talking about the death and destruction that's caused by Marxism. Marxism feeds and breeds on corruption, murder, violence, and tribalism, tribal conflict. 阶级皆无常啊，马克思很喜欢推动一个观念，就是部落主义、种族主义，就是他的非常重要的观念啊，就是阶级无常。Now, I'm talking about class conflict and tribalism and the destruction of the destructive elements of Marxism and how it separates people and advocates for violence. Here's a good example. If you want to read a really good book about 阶级皆无常, about what identity politics does to people and how it destroys society and destroys creativity and destroys freedom, destroys music, free speech, everything. I really encourage you to read this book, Life and Death in Shanghai by Nian Cheng. It's one of the best books I ever read. I would put it in my top 10. She accounts in detail what these idiots did in China and what they continue to do today with places like Xinjiang province and people who spoke out against the COVID virus, and what they do to people. 他们是土匪窝，不是共产党，不是民主党，就是白痴，就是土匪窝，那个 leadership，很多地方在世界上，他们推动暴力的情况，就是要挫败你的生活。So when you read this book, you can learn about how political forces, and you can't say they're communist because they're just low-life scumbags. They're not even really communist by any stretch of the imagination, but they do pretend to purport to understand Marxism, and what they did to this lady is absolutely phenomenally horrible. So I do encourage you to read this, and this is why it's so important, because when you dox people and you try to personally destroy people's lives through social media platforms, it's in the same vein as what they did to this woman. So please read it. It's a great book. Next, I want to talk about identity socialism, American Identity Socialism, and Hitler National Socialism. And I want to bring to your attention some of the things, the parallels, some of the things that are in the same vein as what Hitler did. So, for example, American Identity Socialism, they love to divide people on the following distinctions: class division, gender division, race division, and transgenderism. This is pure tribalism. 就是部落主义。部落主义有一个结束，那个结束就是别人就会是推动一个杀人的哲学。So, American Identity Socialism promotes. Let me start over. Okay, so I start over. American Identity Socialism promotes tribalism. It promotes class conflict. It promotes divisions among people. It divides people's hearts. It's pure hatred. And to make a comparison from analysis, and there are many examples of this, you can read about this online, you can read about it in many texts. Hitler National Socialism embraced racial history, a history based on race, a division of race. Race collective, people state, and race socialism. These are the core tenets of Hitler National Socialism. What's intriguing to me is that if you look at American Identity Socialism, it's worse than what Hitler advocated, because it goes beyond the elements that Hitler embraced, which was a racial history of division. It actually goes even deeper to try to destroy people. It divides people based on class. It divides people based on gender, or the remaking of gender, of trying to create abstractions and social constructs and subjective self-expression as a core element of gender identity. And this is a technique that can create even greater division within people. And it goes into race division and transgenderism. Transgenderism, for my Chinese friends out there, is 变性的观念，就是有男的有女的有变性。I might talk a little bit more about that later on. So, the next thing I want to talk about is I want to get into quotations of Chairman Mao. I want to talk about quotation number 7 and number 8. Today. We covered the other ones previously. So I'm going to read them to you in Chinese, and then I'll give you some English translation. So quotation number 7 from the Little Red Book, 小红书我说理由啊有律我给你们要弄清楚什么意思，就是胡说八道的小本书，我说这样子。Okay. So quotation number 7, 以马克思列宁主义的理论，思想武装起来的中国共产党，在中国人民中国产生了新的工作作风，这主要的就是理论和实践相结合的作风，和人民群众紧密的联系在一起的作风，以及自我批评的作风。So this is actually a difficult read because I spent a lot of time breaking this down and translating it and trying to understand the flow. One of the things I discovered is it's just so nonsensical when you understand what this means that you're going almost in a circular direction that makes no sense. It doesn't have a bottom to it. And there's no solutions offered in this. But basically what it says is that through Leninism and through Marxism, armed with this, the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese Renmin Zhong Chan Cheng Sheng Le, a new masses of public citizens will come to find a different way of doing things. 作风. And then it goes on to say that this is has to be integrated into a new working style, and that with it says 和人民群众, with the people masses, inseparably close to practicing. I'm gonna stop for a second. Let's see if I can fix this. This fucking junk. Doesn't work. The main idea is that by adopting the communist philosophy, you will find a new way of working, and everything will just magically take care of itself. Again, it's a witch doctor without a cure. That's the whole tenet of Marxism. It's witch doctor bullshit with no solutions and no mechanisms. It's complete tripe. It's just 就是胡说八道，就是狗屎，没有什么逻辑啊，就是没有什么特别的角度。There's no key point of 解决, of solution to any of this. It's just nonsense. And the fact that you have people today still mouthing Leninism and Marxism is completely shocking. So the main idea here is that on this quotation, that if you believe in the party, believe in Marxism, you practice self-criticism, everything will take care of itself in a new mass. The new masses will come to a new level of awareness, and that's it. And the second one, quotation number 8. 知道一个伟大的革命运动的政党，如果没有革命理论，没有历史知识，没有对于实际运动的深刻的了解，要取得胜利是不可能的。So in this one, in quotation number 8, it says through the direction of the great direction of the 伟大 means great, the great revolutionary movement of a political party. If you don't have a revolutionary theory and a firm understanding of history, you are not able to make a practical movement of deeper understanding, a profound understanding. 深刻的了解 is a profound, deep understanding. 了解深刻的了解要取得胜利是不可能的。This fucking light. This fucking shit. Doesn't work. I don't know how to clean this fucking mess up. understand how Okay, so for quotation number 8, it simply means that without a deep understanding of history, you cannot make a practical movement of progress. Without revolutionary theory, the masses cannot rise, and that's it. History of what? We have no idea. How this translates into some type of success, it has no sense, no logical coherency to it. It's completely logically incoherent. It's the scrubbings of a small child, the intellectual thought of this. I think that Mao had some problems with his head. I really do. 我觉得毛泽东有脑子进水了，很奇怪，他的说法。The way he talks and the things he says are just completely baseless and empty. 是空的，放空的。It's meaningless. So that's it. And I'll give you a more direct translation of these quotations. I'll read them. Armed with Marxist-Leninist theory and ideology, the Communist Party of China has brought a new style of work to the Chinese people, a style of work which essentially entails integrating theory with practice, forging closer links with the masses and practicing self-criticism. That's it. Even when I move to a direct translation, it doesn't make much sense as well. Again, it simply means a style of work, a new style of work, a new style of being through theory and then integrating theory and practice and understanding history and doing self-criticism and judging yourself. But there's no inherent model or mechanism for a resolution. It's just bullshit. Number 8, quotation number 8, no political party can possibly lead a great revolutionary movement to victory unless it possesses revolutionary theory and a knowledge of history and has a profound grasp of practical movement. So it's advocating some type of pragmatism with no detail, with no substance. Again, a witch doctor without a cure. It doesn't possess any mechanisms of how these things should be transformative. It's nonsense. And as I stated, everyone is an unconscious exponent of a dead philosopher. So even today you still hear references in China to Leninism and Marxism, and you have Americans in the United States like Black Lives Matter who promote Marxism. They're promoting this shit. This is dog shit. And that's it. So that's quotations number 7 and 8. I'm sorry that it wasn't that profound for you, because it wasn't profound for me either. It's profoundly unprofound. That's the key point from today's podcast on Marxism. So now I want to talk about crushing facts. 全中国是一人斗争进行时，我要说起来说谎，要给你们听那个 crushing facts. So I already talked about identity socialism, American identity socialism versus Hitler. It's quite a interesting contrast. The difference between the two is that American identity socialism is far worse in terms of division and divisiveness and hatred and tribalism. That's the amazing thing. And there are people in this country that are promoting this. American identity socialism. There are intellectuals that are promoting it. I don't even think they're intellectuals. I think they're jackasses, personally. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about Lenin. Lenin the murderer. I'm going to give you a quotation from Lenin. Be firm. If there are waverings among the socialists who come over to you yesterday or among the petty bourgeois in regard to the dictatorship of the proletariat, suppress the waverings mercilessly. Shooting is the proper fate of a coward in war. 杀人的哲学哈，这是列宁的，列宁说的。我直接说，列宁说话。That's Lenin. 列宁啊，这是杀人啊。Can't even believe some idiot would even quote him. If anyone is quoting to you Lenin or Marx, run. They're morons. Next one. Next crushing facts. Something economists over the past 20 years haven't told you. There's a lot they haven't told you, including mainstream economists, American economists, global economists. They talk about China and the progress there. It's something I want to bring to your awareness. 3/4 of the 1,500 companies listed as domestic stocks are state-owned. This isn't capitalism. This isn't success. And they're whitewashing their balance sheets. It's crony capitalism. It's total bullshit. So, if somebody tells you how great China is, you say, well, why is it 3/4 of the 1,500 companies listed on the domestic stocks are state-owned? What are the performance metrics for each one of those companies domestically inside of China? They don't have an answer because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So, 资本主义不是真的在中国，是共产党的，是土匪我的。资本主义不是真的是假的。That's it. That's all I'm going to say. That's a crushing fact. Number 2, Olympic Games, Genocide Games. Institutional slavery exists in China today. Big tech companies have been advocating and promoting this, promoting slavery, defending China, trying to stop legislation in the United States to oppose forced labor camps, which is what slavery is. So that's crushing fact number 2. And I talked about this in great detail and gave links on previous podcasts, so I encourage you to go back and look at that and look at the links about legislation and opposition according to certain people. Make up your own mind. I don't want to say all these things to you about which companies are doing what in China and which ones are obstructing legislation to stop what's happening in Xinjiang province. Just don't be a jackass. Don't be an ideologue. Go make up your own mind. Do some research. Think for yourself. Don't repeat what you hear. And spend a little time investigating this. You'll be shocked, perhaps. The next one is my favorite crushing fact from today. We're going to talk about Canadian Beaver Penises. Yes, that's right. I did not misspeak. Canadian Beaver Penises. That's my topic. 12 tons smuggled from Canada to China were confiscated. Actually confiscated in China. The link will be noted below. So beaver 就是海里的眼镜，小弟弟的海里啊。So 在中国，他们很喜欢吃眼镜，海里的眼镜。So 非常恶心的，非常奇怪的，狗屁膏药的观念啊。So 12 tons were smuggled out of Canada. That's just what they caught. So apparently there's a mass genocide of beavers for their penises. I don't know how big beaver penises are, but I have to assume they're not very big. Maybe they're huge. I don't know. But you got to kill a lot of beavers to get 12 tons of penises from beavers, right? I'll put the link below. You can check this out. That's right. Canada is being raped by the Chinese and the Canadian themselves, cutting off beaver penises and killing beavers. This is just unbelievable. So let me give you a little explanation, everyone. So a ton is 2,000 pounds. And so in Chinese, you have 12 tons. This would be 1,880公斤. 1,880公斤. That's how many 公斤 of penises they have. I try to imagine how many beavers they had to kill. How the hell did they get? I don't even know how they did this. But it's not covered in the news. And that's just what we know about. They're raping Canada. Raping the poor little beavers. Highly yinjing. I say it again in Chinese because I think this is a very crushing fact. And I'm not sure that it's easily understood because it's so strange. So I say it to you in Chinese several times to my Chinese friends out there. But there it is. Next crushing fact, number 4. According to the CDC, suicide rate in America has risen by 40% over the past 17 years. 40%. And that number is actually even higher over the past year or two. The 17% is from a statistic in 2019, 2020. So we're in 2022. We're past year and a half. It's jumped up even more. Something that CNN doesn't bother to tell you about. They don't give a shit about you or anybody else. Next one. I'm going to talk about something very controversial, and I'm only going to say a couple things about it, and that's it. I consider these things to be crushing facts. Make up your own minds, do your own research, do some thinking, critical thinking on your own. Transgenderism. I don't even know what this word means. It's not well defined. It's inconsistent. It's logically inconsistent. That's the first thing I'll say. Number 2, I will say that human beings are a sexually dimorphic species. That's fact number 2. Number 3, crushing fact I would say is that gender, sex, and sexual proclivity are independently given. This is absolutely untrue. They're connected. They're all connected. They're not independently given. They're not social constructs. They're integrated. They relate to each other. You can't separate gender from sex. You can't separate sexuality as independent. It all goes together as a human being. That's the only thing I would mention. And I would like to also mention that something that's quite intriguing that came out in the news recently is that there has been Professor Nicholas Mayweather, won a First Amendment lawsuit against Shawnee State University in the Fifth Circuit of Appeal over their demand of the use of gender pronouns. I'm hearing different numbers. There's 62 pronouns, 65 pronouns. Again, it's logically incoherent pronouns, and it's highly unconstitutional for an ideological debate to try to make demands on spoken language. Government should never be telling you what words you can use and can't use, because this will inhibit free speech and it will inhibit your ability to think. Government has no power to force compelled speech on ideological grounds. That's a fact. The court just upheld that. So if someone's telling you you have to use the 62 plus growing number of pronouns, that's false. And the courts are starting to show that. They're insisting that courts and governments have to weigh in on ideological debates, and then demanding the courts enforce speech based on ideological debate is unconstitutional, and it's unlawful. And I think in the future you're going to see more decisions like on Shawnee State University Fifth Circuit Court with Professor Nicholas Mayweather. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not advocating one thing or the other. I'm just stating these things as crushing facts. There's nothing revolutionary in saying that human beings are a sexually dimorphic species. There's nothing revolutionary in saying that there's a logical inconsistency in the definitions of transgenderism and the pronouns. And there's nothing controversial, really, if you stop and think about it, when you say that the government has no power to force compelled speech on ideological grounds or ideological debate. That's it. I don't think it's controversial. However, I'm sure there's some people who will think it is. I do believe that people should respect each other and their differences, and respect individual identity, respect people. But in terms of having the government come in and tell you what pronouns you can use, or how you should think and what you should think, and what language you have to use, especially in the middle of an ideological debate, is profoundly misguided if you advocate for this, and you should leave this country because you don't belong here, in my view. If you're advocating for controlled speech, you don't belong in America. And the reason you don't belong here is because this is a free country. If you don't like it, leave. So, next thing I want to talk about is Harvard University and Yale University. As some of you may know, Harvard University has come under fire a lot recently. They're engaged in a lawsuit where their admissions programs have deliberately discriminated against different races of people, specifically Asian Americans in the most recent lawsuit. A petition from students for fair admissions has gone after Harvard for this. Harvard continues to argue they have every right to discriminate in their admissions programs. That's a fact. You can look it up. I'll give you some links below. And I believe it is going to the Supreme Court, this case. The other thing about Harvard University I'd like to mention is Charles Lieber found guilty in hiding fees that he charged to the Chinese government. He concealed his ties and financially agreed to publish articles and apply for patents on behalf of Wuhan University of Technology. I mean, what is the coincidence here? Wuhan virus and you have Harvard chemistry professor, the chairman of the department, who was doing the bidding of the Chinese and hiding his financial background relating to this. It's quite shocking. I can't believe there isn't more outrage all over the country over this. It doesn't do Harvard well. Either does this lawsuit. It brings shame, I believe. I think that if you did an opinion poll, most people would find that the opinion of Harvard has dropped significantly and the reputation is in serious jeopardy. Next thing I want to talk about is Yale University. Recently, Jamie Patrone stole $40 million. She was an administrator at Yale University with buying fraudulent computer purchases, and electronic purchasing fraud. That's at the Yale University School of Medicine. So this is quite interesting. And I want to go back to Harvard in this lawsuit. So I want to say this in Chinese. Harvard University 要采用一个观念，要用偏见对亚洲人、亚洲学生啊，他们觉得如果他们采用偏见对他们的决定跟他们的 Harvard admissions program， 他们觉得这样子是非常公平。他们争论这个角度，这个观念，他们要推动。他们继续争论，在那个 court system， 在美国要偏见对人。他们的种族啊。So I just explained that in Chinese because I think it's mind-boggling that they're actually publicly out there arguing in favor of discriminating against people, and no one's talking about it. I mean, I don't want to say no one's talking about it. Obviously, people are talking about it. I'm talking about it right now. But I don't know where you stand on this, but I don't understand why they would use race. Why wouldn't they use socio-economic disadvantage as a criteria and as a composite of their analysis of how they admit students? The last thing in the world they want to do is racist, but that's what they are held back on being. So they could easily shift their criteria to socioeconomically disadvantaged groups to create more diversity within their student base. And for some reason, they're held back on looking at skin color. I think that's appalling. I think that they should be looking at socioeconomic factors and other things when they make decisions. If they want to create diversity, first they need to prove that diversity has a benefit. They need to provide the research that shows diversity has it, number one. Two, they need to spend more time looking at socially economic disadvantaged students, not based on race, not based on skin color. I can't think of anything more shallow than what Harvard's doing. And then making a decision on their student body. Anyway, that's it for today. Hopefully I'll be able to post this today. And I want to again tell you, 没有言论，没有自由。我要谢谢你们参加我的 podcast。我太感谢你们了，参加我的 podcast。我希望你们觉得我的 podcast 很有意思。别忘记了，就是一个讽刺。那个 crushing fact 是真的，不是假的。但是我要选择 crushing facts 就是很好笑的，就是吓一跳的 crushing facts. Thank you everyone, and I wanted to just say that, and I was just yelling out to my Chinese friends out there, explaining what the crushing facts are. And again, this is a satire pointing out crushing facts that are somewhat shocking, but that doesn't mean that they're not true. Even though this is a satire, that doesn't mean these facts are not true. They are true. And if you don't agree with them, that's great. But I do encourage you to make up your own mind. So thank you, everyone. No speech, no life. From Little Mao. 谢谢你们，上架，再见. Thank you, everyone, and peace out.